Hi, I'm Judith Germain from the Maverick Paradox, and this is the final Mavericks of Mass Creation, a series of unscripted conversations between a series of unscripted conversations between myself and creativity activator David Chislett. We believe mavericks and creativity combine to make an irresistible force for change that is sorely needed in a world that is developing faster than any time in our history. So with these videos, it is our desire to share our knowledge about maverick leadership and creativity with you to help you make this world a better place. So in today's chat, I'm speaking to David about sleep, perchance to dream.
Indeed.
Tell me more.
Well, in our last episode, I mentioned this thing about creative thinkers being really good at flick-flacking between rational, conscious, systems-driven thinking and supra or subconscious thinking. So I thought it'd be probably a good idea to dive into that a little bit and explain exactly what's going on.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about our intelligence and our consciousness is that our waking mind, the rational conscious mind, has access to a fairly limited amount of brain space. So if you're going to go into physical metaphor, it's got access to, a few hundred square feet. Whereas the rest of your brain, the subconscious or the unconscious mind, has access to several farms of brain space, of information, of detail. So you may have read the book Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. When things are well known and it's pattern based and it's available to our waking consciousness, we're able to make really quick decisions without any apparent thought because it's all already there. It's within grasp of our consciousness. But quite often aha moments or inspirations and ideas and eureka moments take a lot more time. And so what happens is that a lot of people feel that creativity is magic because that answer suddenly pops out at unexpected times and places when you're doing random stuff like ironing, showering, walking the dog, not when you're working, not when you really need it. And that's because the sub and unconscious intellectual processes are far slower than our conscious rational ones because they are sorting through such vast swathes of information by comparison to what our conscious mind is. So it's not magic. It's just that you press the enter key on the internal computer and it goes
It's
for a lot longer than your rational mind does. And then when it's finished, it doesn't give a damn what you're doing. It just goes beep, and there's the answer. And it's like, oh, look at that, magic. And it's like, no. That's the answer to the question you asked 5.5 days ago. Here it is.
Is that why, if you don't capture it immediately, you can't remember it? Is it because your conscious mind didn't come up with it, which is why if you don't write it down or you don't follow it immediately, you just cannot remember what it was?
Right, because it's not at your fingertips. It didn't come from anywhere near your fingertips. So you need to grab onto it really quickly. So why is it to sleep, perchance to dream? Well, this is what happens when you dream. Your unconscious mind is taking stuff, that new information, repeated information, and it's shuffling it, it's comparing it, sorting it, it's putting it into deep storage, into short-term storage, it's defragging your internal hard drive. But unlike your rational brain, your subconscious brain, your sleeping brain is not doing it according to some system of thought, like logic. It's just shuffling everything and going, oh, does this match? Does this match? Does this match? Ka-ching, oh, this matches. That's interesting. Boom. Which is why your dreams are so psychedelic. That's why you have these odd dreams where people who don't belong together emerge together in situations that they should never be in, doing stuff that they would never do, because that's what your brain's doing. It's shuffling data and it's coming up with, it's seeing what fits together. And it probably rejects a lot of that stuff because it doesn't fit together. But in the dream state, in REM sleep, you are kind of seeing that stuff. So if you really want inspiration, a really powerful tool is to frame the problem very clearly in your brain before you go to sleep. And you will find that quite often you will wake up And before you engage with your day, before you switch on rational brain, the answer will be there. You need to have a pen and a notebook next to your bed so that when you wake up, you can write down whatever you're thinking about. And maybe if you've never done this before, it won't happen immediately, but stick with it for a couple of weeks. Frame the problem, the challenge, the thing you're trying to solve, and go to sleep and see what is in your mind in the morning.
That makes a lot of sense to me, because I talked to my clients and I said, if you told your self-conscious, have you told your unconscious what you want to do? And they look at me like really crazy. And I'm like, don't you just, and then I have to explain how the unconscious mind works and how the conscious mind works and how you have to direct it and it will go away and chug around in the background. Although I love your explanation way better. I'm just thinking, because I know you can buy those CDs for like accelerated learning and all this sort of stuff. So if you got one of those CDs that had the REM sleep frequency playing, would that put you in the right frame of mind, or do you literally have to sleep?
I don't really know enough about how that REM frequency stuff, from a CD base works. But essentially what you need to do is be in a state where your conscious mind isn't driving the bus.
Yeah.
So actually, when you're in your shower, your conscious mind isn't driving the bus either, because you've showered many times before, hopefully. So you know what to do. All right. So your conscious mind doesn't need to be in the driver's seat. You're also in an enclosed space with very little stimuli. So you're not looking outwards, you're inwardly focused, you're warm, it feels good. So you're thinking about yourself and you're slightly happy and content. That's why you get ideas in the shower, because you are entering a state where your conscious, rational mind is taken offline by your physical experience.
Okay.
And then the subconscious is like, oh, hey, he's listening. And starts dropping the little nuggets in. So any activity which meets those requirements, which are the 4 standard neurological requirements of creative thought, will give you similar benefits to sleeping and dreaming. So for me, example, when I'm fit, which I'm not at the moment, and I'm running, I had the most amazing realizations when I'm running. Because I'm going at full pace, my body is engaged, I'm fit, so I'm not having to think about how much it's hurting. And the sensation of my physical engine doing what it needs to do is very pleasing. And I don't have to think about anything. And I'm not watching the clock to make sure I'm improving. And then stuff starts to happen. And people report this when they're walking the dog, when they're working in the garden, when they're washing the car, when they're doing the washing up, when they're doing the ironing, folding and sorting, washing, anything where the mechanics of it are so well known to you that it doesn't require rational, conscious direction. Conscious mind gets, oh God, are we folding and washing again? I'm so bored. And then the unconscious mind's like, hey, he's gone. And then the stuff starts to happen. This is what sports stars do. They are so well trained in the skills and the techniques and the physical fitness of their art that when they're in a match situation, stuff just happens. Stuff emerges in the moment because they don't have to think about the skills requirement involved.
That makes sense. Yeah, because sometimes when you're in that moment, you can acknowledge that what just happened is totally beautiful. Like, you've caught this ball from nowhere. And he's like, that's amazing, because you're not thinking about it. Your hand just goes up and then you've caught it. So it's
because you've practiced doing that so many times, you don't have to think about it. So it's like this. What?
Yeah, exactly.
I caught it. And notice it's I caught it, not I caught it. Yeah. It's what you've been saying the whole time. There's no ego.
Yeah.
But you've got to have physically, consciously repeated that action enough times that you become good enough at it that it becomes totally unconscious for that to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Jazz musicians on stage, live. Man, amazing. Those guys are highly schooled, highly trained technicians. But what happens in the moment's not technical or technique. It's passion. It's pure channel. It's pure reaction to what the other did because they don't have to think about it. They just follow their fingers. They just go with the flow. And we can do that in every single aspect of our lives, but we've got to have enhanced skill sets around that activity to enable that process to take place. So when people say Lionel Messi is a genius, what do they mean? You know, Lionel Messi has spent his entire life playing football all day, every day. So he doesn't have to think about playing football anymore. He can just react in the moment because his body knows what's to do. His rational, conscious mind is out of the way. The same of any concert musician. And the same of any entrepreneur or inventor when they're in the moment dealing with a business challenge. The skill set is so advanced that the solution appears like magic because it's coming from the bigger brain, which our conscious monkey mind isn't interfering with for a change.
That makes so much sense, because I'm thinking about Maverick leaders, and because they're innovating all the time, solving problems is really easy. So they're confident that whatever the problem is, they can solve it because they're constantly solving things, even if they don't need to be solved. They're constantly going, what if, what would happen if the sun went dark? That's the sort of things that they will ponder on. That's really fascinating.
So they're in the habit of flow.
Yeah, that's right. So what would happen then? I'm thinking of the modern office pre-COVID, where, the more senior you are, the more meetings that you're in, and you're back-to-back meetings once a week is fine, but when it's 5 days a week, where do the creativity, is that why nothing ever happens in the meetings? Because there's no creativity, because everybody's just moving from one to the next, to the next, to the next.
It's all very conscious, it's all very measured, it's all very rational, it's held to very specific outcomes, it's all very predefined, it's all very systematic. It's all, the way that style of management is set up is custom made to kill creativity dead. And it's not by accident, because creativity is difficult to measure, it's difficult to quantify,
it's challenging
to put on a clock. So we'd rather not have it. We'd rather have these predictable outputs, even if it means we sacrifice something more interesting stuff.
The factory setup,
predictability. And
that's why all the bells are coming on now, because that's why when you've got somebody in the room who's doodling and who's going into the flow, into the creative state that you've been talking about so well, and everyone's going, they're so lazy, they're not paying attention. But they're just deliberately putting themselves into that creative state, but they are penalized by other people.
Yep.
Gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So what do you do then? So what advice have you got for managers who don't want to send their staff off to sleep all the time, but they do need that creative input? What can they do?
Well, you need to create space for it, both physical and time, in order for people to enter into a place for a period of time where they're not being held to tightly defined outcomes, where the point of being there is to be there and to do this thing, not to leave with that thing.
Right.
And to understand that by doing that often, you will then start to leave with things.
Because you've talked about this before. I'm thinking, because you were saying about you have to give up control. As a manager, you have to stop controlling where the dots are for people to pick up.
Well, you have to give up control over a certain category of things, but you have to control the fact that there needs to be a time and a place. There needs to be a structure. You need to hold a structure so that the thing can happen inside it. But you can't pre-decide what the thing is going to be. That control you need to give up.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's really difficult. So what kind of comfort can you give people?
The comfort I can give to people is that it is predictable. Much like so many other human skills, creative thinking can be Pavlovian. Bell rings, dog drools. Worker steps into specific space, ideas come out. Stephen King writes about this in his book On Writing. He says literally, because every day he sits in the same chair for the same period of time doing the same thing, it doesn't matter what's going on in his head before he gets there. He literally says, bum hits chair, writing happens. He has automated his access to creative flow through sheer repetition.
Yeah, and if you expect it to happen, your subconscious is going to try hard to make sure it does happen. So if you believe you're going to be
I would
creative.
rephrase that slightly. I would, because expectations are tricky.
Okay.
It's more like, you know, it's going to happen. Trust.
Yeah, that's
rather
what
than
I mean.
Expect.
Yeah.
And so the manager has got to hold that space for long enough so that he can trust it, or she. And so do the people who step into the space, because they need to feel safe. Because otherwise you're not going to float these wild ideas that actually are coming up inside your head when you know that it's not safe to, when it's just going to get shot down and ridiculed or just ignored, or nothing then happens outside of the room. And that's where the typical management functions then come back online. You go, okay, so we got this thing, now we're going to put it into the system.
Yeah. Because I know that I've always preferred for individuals to go off and think about something first and then come into the room.
Great. So what happens is, on their own, the individuals will drive their way through all of the obvious solutions that everyone all thinks of, until they get to a point where they suddenly come up with their own ideas. Everyone should do that in isolation, and then they come together with their pre-existing own ideas, and that's what you act as conflicting collaborators around, until, without any ego, you're able to, in the process, settle on the solution which appears of this moment in time to work the best. And that's what you take out the door and plug back into the rational, structured, systemized thinking and normal daily business life.
That's brilliant, because one of the things I always think that brainstormings in the corporate space often don't work, because it's not real brainstorming, because, you know, so
hey,
it's much
5 minutes, we're starting a brainstorm, come and join us, you're creative.
Exactly. It's much better that people go off, brainstorm on their own, come back with the better ideas, and then take it from that, because then the manager's not sitting there going, oh, you know, because they go, oh, these are good ideas, and then you can really buy into it. Is that the better way to do creativity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every single brainstorm should have an individual pre-brainstorm built into the program.
Brilliant. I'm not crazy then. Thank you.
No, I mean, it's scientifically proven, but also just observationally. One of the exercises I do is I show a bunch of umbrellas and I say, right, you've got 2 minutes. I want to hear every use you can think of for an umbrella. And everyone shouts it out, you know, and for 2 minutes, it's like you're hearing to collect water, to, you know, what. And then we're like, okay, good. I write as many of them down as I can. And then I'm like, okay, great. Look at all these wonderful ideas. And we look, and I say, okay, so here are all the ideas. And I've got 30 seconds to come up with even better ideas without repeating any of these. And that's when you start getting to satellite dish, shortwave antenna, a photon umbrella for a spaceship. And you're like going, well, this is the same people who just said short sword stick, walking stick, you know, pick up dog turd. You've got to push through the banal, the known, the pattern related, the easy to get to, until you get to the end. And then only then, once you burst that sound barrier, as it were, do you get to the really interesting stuff.
The reason I was giggling, because it just made me realize that that's why Maverick leaders don't get involved in the beginning, because, as you say, they're banal. So it's like, yeah. And it's only until it gets interesting is when they go, yeah. Satellite dish, yeah, let's work from there, as opposed to stop the rain. That is a fantastic thing there, David. I think it's probably a good time to stop.
Before we all go to sleep.
Right, you can edit this bit because I've lost my things turned around, so I can't read it. So you've got a few more edits to do this time around on this one.
Wow, lovely.
Okay, can you can't see my phone in the thing, can you?
No.
Okay. Thanks for watching and listening in. So I'll start that again because you look like you was tapping away. Are you ready?
Yep.
Thank you for watching and listening in. We hope you found this whole series useful and you had great tips to help you on your journey. Please check the show notes for all our links and sign up to our newsletters or social feeds to keep in touch. Unfortunately, there will be no more Mavericks. Unfortunately, there'll be no more Mavericks or mass creation in this series, but watch our feeds. There may be another one. Bye.